back, movie fans. This is the podcast Sequel Suck, and we are going back to Haddonfield. And Michael Myers is back. It's the worst looking Michael Myers, but he's back. And the ever reliable Angus is back with me, Michelle, and special guest, Shaun Crawford. Hi,
Hello.
Shaun.
Very well. How are you guys?
Good. And
Amazing.
I'm assuming you're happy to see Michael Myers back in a Halloween film.
I am. And to be honest, it wasn't really that bad. It wasn't that bad a sequel either. I know I'm jumping ahead of the gun, but I don't care. Like, it's much better than part 2.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's a strange thing, isn't it? Like, this is another one. We talked about this last episode with Halloween 3, where it was like we all, with the exception of Michelle, who watched it for the first time, but still like wasn't quite sure what they were getting themselves into. We're all a bit like, oh, Halloween 3, all right. I had that kind of vibe with Halloween 4, where I watched it way back in the VHS days, and then kind of had this memory of like, no, I don't need to do that again. And then I rewatched it last year, and I was like, what happened? Why didn't I like this? What went wrong? Why was I in a bad mood? Because this is definitely, I don't know if better is the word. It's a more enjoyable sequel than Halloween 2. It's a more fun return to Michael Myers than Halloween 2. It's I like was pleasantly surprised. And it's just growing in my estimation every time I watch it now. So yeah, spoilers, no bearing the lead, but I like this movie.
Well, I'm not going to go too hard, too fast, because you two already have blown your load. But I'm going to say, yeah, I definitely, it's not perfect, but it's definitely enjoyable. And it's, there's probably some little things that could have been better. It's definitely one of those movies, and something I didn't touch on Halloween 2 is these two movies in particular, and I'm sure there's a few Friday the 13th chucked in that came out in this same era. They are the cliches that Scream gives. These are the pin-ups for those Scream gives shit for, because there's so many funny things about it. Oh, really? You really just went and did that? Or just some of whether the script makes a character do a certain thing is like, oh, really? I don't think it, There's some funny things like that, but there's some really positive stuff too. But Michelle, how, as someone that's just seen it recently, how did you enjoy it?
Well, I was worried because Shaun told me last time they get a bit shit. And I put it in our group chat yesterday saying, no, they don't. I like this better than 2.
Well, it's subjective, but then maybe, in fairness to Shaun, maybe he's saying some of the other ones can be a bit shit.
Yeah, he does have information you don't have at this point. Having only gotten up to 4. So
yeah. I mean, we're not even halfway through the franchise yet. So
Oh, God.
buckle up, sister.
Yeah, there is some peaks and troughs in this series. I'll say that.
Well, this was a peak. I liked this one.
It's a lot of fun. I am curious right off the bat, particularly with you, Cable and Michelle, as cosplayers, as people who love getting the specificity of a costume, of going out and finding just the right look to a
feel
mask,
like I know where you're going.
Boiler suit, a knife. How do you feel about the mask of Michael Myers in Halloween 4?
It is horrible.
It's definitely the worst, and it's funny because I had an opportunity to actually get one not long ago, and I finally balked at it. I'm like, common sense. Like, it still would have cost me a decent amount of coin, but I was kind of like, there's something about it that's sort of, I wouldn't even say endearing, but it's a terrible. When I was watching it again yesterday, I was like, this is a terrible mask, and I know they've tried to update it or change enough, or they didn't have the original, like we talked about in Halloween 2. The original got lost or kept and never returned, and somebody probably got it somewhere in their storeroom or garage somewhere. But this one is just a terrible. And every time I look at it, it makes me think he looks like a mime. And I know the thing is,
Michael Myers, scary.
Well, Michael Myers doesn't speak anyway, so kind of that works into it. But it's like, it's not. It's kind of creepy, but not intimidating enough. And this goes back to our conversation we've had on previous movies, especially me and Angus, talking about especially video covers from back in the day and going to the video store and renting. Halloween 4 was the cover that I actually remember is burning into my brain the most. And maybe because as a kid I saw the poster at the video shop, I just remember that cover and loving it, but being so freaked out by it. And that cover is Michael Myers. That is a still from Halloween 2, so it kind of is the old school Michael Myers look. And then you go, oh, no, we're just going to have the Where's Waldo version of Michael Myers. It looks so lame. And anyway, it's just really, I don't know. That's the one thing I was going to bring up, potentially is a real ugly part of this movie that dropped it down, but it's just like, oh no, how did they stuff up getting the mask.
We
But
can
isn't
And
it?
see his eyes. You can see too much. Like Loomis tells us, it's like the devil's eyes, the blackest eye. And in this movie, he's
Yeah.
just like this the whole
Yeah.
time. Every
Yeah.
shot, you just see this bug-eyed fuck coming up at you.
But isn't it
Yeah,
meant to
but-
be that he like went into like a cheap store and that's like where he got it from? So it's almost like a knockoff of
Mm.
what a Michael Myers would be that you'd
Yeah.
get from, say, like a Spirit Halloween,
Yeah.
and this is like your reject shop.
Which is
Michael Myers
This
mask.
is Wish.
It's a
Yeah.
great concept. It's a
Mm.
great concept that like Michael Myers can only get his mask back by buying a mask inspired
Or
by
stealing.
him. Or
Yeah.
stealing. Fucking be great if he just like walked up and just like handed it over.
Yeah, $20.
I was like, "You're right, mate." But yeah, it is a great.
This is
bit
a
that, like,
fucking
the only way
bargain
get your
compared to
mask-
those other ones that were going in the background. Remember those last ones? Those fucking $90 masks that were trying to flog us? The fucking witches and the fucking shamrocks and shit
Yeah.
like that. This one's $20. I'll take it.
That is something I feel like should be brought up in like in the Scream franchise at some point that I don't think it ever has. Is like the killers referencing the fact that they had to like go online and buy costumes from the Stab movie to dress up and reenact the real Stab movie. I feel like there's like a missed opportunity, but there is something they do here in this one that's pretty cool. But even with that cool concept, you think that the people responsible for creating the visage of this absolute embodiment of evil would have done a better job, because it's not scary.
No.
Not scary to look at in this movie. He's just kind of
But
goofy
this
looking.
this becomes the issue time and time again with the Halloween franchise, though, doesn't it? Because as much as we all like Halloween H2O, and we do all like Halloween H2O, there
Mask
is
is-
nobody in their right mind is saying that the mask in Halloween H2O is any good, because it is. But how many were there? 2, 3, 4 masks through that entire film?
Mm.
Like none of them
Big
are
bar.
any good. And it
Mm.
becomes like, it's become Halloween 4 was the first time it become like a proper issue where the mask and the way the mask looks has become a little bit of a sticking point for the fans.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't mind the idea of, yes, it's the cheap knockoff, because his original one obviously is since gone once he's been arrested and or would have got burnt off in Halloween 2. If we're
Or
continuing
burnt
that timeline,
to his fucking
yeah,
face. but
face and that
never
too.
mind.
So of course
Just skirt
been
around that.
he's been in the, what do you call it, sanitarium or whatever. He's got out, so he wants to grab something. And I can kind of imagine 10 years on, some toy company has made knockoff Michael Myers masks for Halloween, and he's just grabbed one. So you could kind of go, well, okay, it's supposed to kind of look shit, but I don't think that's what they intended. It's just, that's a theory we're now coming up with, and or fans did, but I don't think it was supposed to look like shit. I know they had problems with it. And originally, it was actually supposed to be blonde. So it was blonde for a little bit, and they did reshoots to make it closer to the original because they thought it was too different or whatever. But yeah, he originally was stealing one that had blonde hair, this as the story goes. But also there was, funnily enough, I only read this tonight, and I don't know how true this is because I should know this stuff. But the original Michael Myers was actually fired. So there was another guy in the suit in the first couple of days of shooting, and there was, because there was issues and the producers didn't like the mask, and there was issues with the, like we were talking about, the eyes and the size of the eye holes and all that. They were playing around with it, and then in the end, they fired the Michael Myers and got in. Is it George Wilbur that plays Michael
George
Myers?
Wilbur is Michael Myers.
Yes,
George
he
Wilbur,
wasn't
yeah.
the first. He wasn't the first guy, so he came on board a few days in, or definitely into the at some point into the shoot. So that kind of might explain. Also, I feel like some of the Michaels look different if you watch the movie again. I feel like there's some differences, but anyway, that's just me. I think producers, there was a lot of issues with the director, producers, and that because they didn't like the mask either. So you think they'd have enough money in the budget to still somehow get a mold of the original or close enough to the original.
Yeah, Jesus, I mean, William Shatner will make appearances for a fucking pack of cigarettes most of the time. Just get the guy a deck and then take a cast of his face. He'll be fine.
Well, I also wonder if they had issues with the mask, because this is also the first Halloween movie that John Carpenter was involved with.
True.
Now, he was asked to do a script. I think him and Deborah Hill did a script, but producers
They
weren't
did a
big fans.
pitch. Do you know
Yes.
what the pitch allegedly is? I don't know how much.
Um,
the internet will tell you different things, but
yeah.
there's an alleged pitch.
Tell us what you think you know. because I feel like
Ghost Michael.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
So the alleged pitch was that the town has banned Halloween after what happened. So this Haddonfield no longer allows Halloween to be celebrated, costumes, masks, any of that. No, too much horror. Yep. And so a bunch of kids. I don't know. It's hard to find accurate information. One version of the story is that Lindsay Wallace and Tommy Doyle, now they're older, they still live across the street. They have stayed friends through the trauma they went through, and they kind of decide, hey, let's see if we can summon some spooky shit, because they're a bit messed up from nearly being murdered, and they want to summon to basically ask, like, why the fuck did you traumatize us? And they accidentally summon the ghost of Michael Myers, and that's how he comes back, because he's now a ghost, an evil and it goes into the idea of what Loomis said, like, he's not human, he's not a man, this is a thing we're talking about, this is evil, this is something more than just a person. And they're going to expand upon that in a more elaborate way, that, like, yeah, he really was just a vessel to house this evil thing, and the evil has been released from the vessel and now can do anything. And the number one reason that the producers balked at it is because they kept using the word incantation and invocation in the pitch that they made, and all they remembered was, like, invocation meant something to do with witches, which was the last one, which didn't make enough money, so no. And that's basically why they were like, no invocations, nothing like that. And that was so that's the version that I could find. Did you find anything different about the original pitch?
No, I think the last thing I read was sort of similar to what you were saying, that they definitely were making Michael Myers a bit more supernatural. Pretty much the gist of what you just said. What did you guys think about the fact that Dr. Loomis was back and Michael, and that they didn't really, which is funny because I was reading up online, I was sort of having a bit of browse today, and that's the one thing I'm like, oh, well, Loomis pretty much sacrificed himself to make sure Michael was dead at the end of 2.
Which is one of the best things about 2. Like, the ending is like, okay.
And then it's kind of
works.
like, oh no, we need them both back. So they're going to both live. And I believe they had planned to film a scene that was supposed to be the end of 2, like a flashback to show Loomis surviving and then Michael surviving, that they said, whatever budget-wise or whatever, they decided not to film it. And I just think that would have been so good, because the scripted version was going to be firefighters get there, which is funny because it's similar to what happens in Halloween Kills. That's
where Halloween Kills got it from.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, yeah. And then I read that's a tip of in
fact, the line that is written is that Loomis says, "Let him burn," and that's exactly what Jamie Lee Curtis says in the back.
So yeah, I only just read that in the last few hours or so, that there was supposed to be a linkage to 2, and it explained the survival of Loomis and Michael. So it makes all sense, because I still feel like, and then it's this weird, then convoluted way of, then they go, oh, we'll leave it out because we kind of want to ignore 2, but it's like, you don't, because Loomis has got the scarring on, which, mind you, again, seems to change a lot in the movie as well. That's a whole other thing, but
what they get instead of that scene you talked about is that squiggy looking motherfucking guard at the start, who basically just gives you a monologue that recaps the first 2
I know,
movies.
how creepy. He's like a pedophile for sure.
He's
information
awesome.
No one would have, because if you think about it, the only people who know that Laurie Strode was Michael Myers' sister is like that one chick in the back of the car who tells Loomis, who even Loomis didn't know. It was like, it was a secret file that was hidden. No one knew it's his sister. And then Loomis isn't going to go running around sharing that information, presumably. So how does this fucking security guard nobody
he
find
fucking
out?
Yells like a maniac most of the film.
People just overheard him.
I shot him.
Yeah.
How do you know it's his sister?
Mm.
You keep yelling at when you're taking a shit, Doc.
But it's look, in fairness, it's set 10 years later, so theoretically, Laurie could have come out and the news would have come out that was his sister, and this is the reason why. I don't know if that's classified information anymore.
Did a pretty good job of incorporating it. I've never had an issue with it. Like, I've always thought that the way Loomis approaches it, when he shows him the back of his hand and his face, and he says, look at me, look at you, like, this is the thing. I always thought it was like that idea of exposition as ammunition. I always thought it was delivered in a relatively okay way.
Oh no, I liked it, but he seemed like a creepy dude.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And that guy, I don't know what I know him from. He's been in every episode of Raymond O'Connor is the security guard I'm talking about. But I feel like he was in an episode of Seinfeld or something I watched a bunch as a kid, because every time I see him, I just instantly like, oh, this is going to be funny. And then I remember it's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be the start of a horror movie. So I can't like take it seriously as I should.
I even like the idea, you know, it's like thundering outside, it's shitty weather, it's like a storm, but then also he opens his private door and then it's a lift and it goes down. So it's like going down to hell to get, you know, Michael has to be put downstairs kind of thing. I don't know, just the
I have a question about hell.
I liked it.
Yeah, I like it.
Why is there a currently venting steam pipe right next to patients in a hospital when they walk past? There's just this steam
I
pipe
saw
like,
that as well.
I'm like, this isn't the basement. This is meant to be a hospital ward.
This is an OHS issue, guys.
No
I
wonder
mean,
Michael is angry.
Well, they never have staff,
Yeah.
so it's like it's just a Haddonfield
This hospital
thing.
actually has the most staff of any Halloween movie so far. There's like 9 people in the room.
There's like 3 people that work there. It's fucking crazy. If
There's
anything, they're
2 security
overstaffed.
guards.
They came back
people
after-
can run hospitals with 2.
Yes,
They're
'cause
back after
Dr.
Halloween
Chalice
too.
isn't there.
Yes.
Dr. Chalice isn't there, so no one's getting sexually assaulted. They're like, yeah, we can go to work again.
I know. I liked it. I thought that the setup and the premise to get Michael back was handled probably as best as it could be handled, all things considered.
I think you have to have Loomis back in order to get Michael back. I think it's the only way that this movie works. I think if it's just Michael, it becomes a bit absurd.
Yeah.
Because if 2 people survive, obviously it wasn't as bad as it looked. That's kind of the vibe I get.
Yeah. But also because Michael is such a titan, because he is such a juggernaut, then the antithesis of that, which is the righteous, the good, Loomis has been, you know, even if it was only for two episodes, Loomis has been that issue. And we know that Loomis has what it takes to be able to stand up against them. So we don't have to go through we're dealing with shorthand now, cinematic shorthand, where we don't have to be reintroduced. We've already got that new part that we're going to reintroduce, which PS I've got issues with. But all that stuff about you know Jamie and all that kind of stuff, like we need time to go through that. We don't need to spend more time introducing another antithesis to Michael. So it's a tried and trusted method getting Loomis back, and Donald Pleasance can do that kind of shit in his sleep as well.
And
I actually thought he was quite good in this. I think he was better in this than he was in the first 2.
Well, he really kind of has gone crazy in this one and is leaning into it.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, this guy he's over the edge. He is just as crazy. The scene where he's kind of first reintroduced back in the movie, I think is my favorite scene of his of all. When he's talking to the guy, like, look at my face, look at my... And then the guy gets the phone call. He's like, oh, I see. All right. And he's like, there's been an accident. And he doesn't even finish the sentence, and Loomis just fucks off out of the room. And the guy's like, oh. Like, that's just beautiful. It's like perfect. Or when perfect way to sell that moment.
When he gets to the crash.
Oh,
yeah. He gets the crash and the ambulance is upside down. And which, P.S., obviously, this is all good. This is all inspiration on Halloween 2018, surely.
Yes.
Like all that stuff. Like, there's 100%. You know, even later on in the film with the mob and all that kind of stuff. But he gets to the ambulance. The ambulance is turned upside down, and somebody is like some passing comment of it, just like, oh, it's pretty bad in there. And there's like the inside of the ambulance is like
blood,
fucking bloodbath. Like, what happened inside that ambulance, man? Like, bananas. But then Loomis like just charges into the water. He didn't even bother taking his jacket off. I don't know if you ever noticed that. He didn't take his jacket off. He didn't take his shoes off. He didn't take his pants off. No, just goes in, key, wallet, phone, all of his fucking pockets, and just gonna wait in. He is out of his mind in this film. Like, he's lost it.
And then he says, like, after he goes and looks at him, he's like, he's gone. Like, of course he's gone. This happened hours ago. It's the next day, Loomis. What are you talking about?
How many bodies did you find?
What happened in that ambulance is the first, like, really different Michael kill that we get, where he puts his fucking thumb through a guy's forehead.
Yeah,
like that's
crazy.
We never get anything like that from Michael in the first 2.
Well, he's been using a stress ball for like 10 years, so that makes sense. He's got that sort of strength.
But yeah, I think that weirdly, that is such a great setup for Michael in this movie. Like, the first time we see him really go someone is like, no, I'm going to put my thumb through your forehead. That's how strong I am. That's how little.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We are going to get like something more deeply threatening and unhinged than the first 2. We kind of do. Like, he's a pretty violent dude in the first 2, but in this one's like, oh yeah, you're pretty fucked up, Michael. You're really bad.
Well, I think like the first 2 proves that the character is unhinged. Like, he's obviously mental. But this idea of this gorilla-like strength that he has behind him as well, it just kind of compounds the issue, doesn't it? And it even harkens forward to the 2018, which is still one of, I mean, it's not a perfect film by any stretch, but it's one of my favorite creepy moments where he reaches over the stall and drops the teeth.
Yeah.
Like that, the idea that he's just ripping people's teeth out with his bare hands, like that level of strength coupled with unpredictability, like or that sociopath nature, like that's terrifying. That's a threat. That's
and the
scary.
only other time we see a kill like that with that kind of brute strength and complete like lack of emotion, in Season of the Witch, when the robot like rips the guy's face off in the hospital room. Like it took a robot to do that, and now Michael, a human being, is like, no, I can do that.
Yeah. Oh, certainly, at least until Rob Zombie's version comes along. There's an absolutely grotesque kill in Rob Zombie's one in the truck stop in the toilet.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just awful. That's like watching a fucking
there's
snuff
some
film.
pretty horrific business that goes on in Halloween Kills as well.
Yeah.
where, like, oh, yeah, he's really crossed up. But this, I think this is kind of the start of Michael
100%.
as completely and it's funny because his mask is the least scary thing in the world, but
Yeah.
he's the most terrifying version of Michael in this.
But I think even
really good
even
character.
there's the strength, and yeah, sometimes in this movie he used weapons, but even the thumb, as soon as I remember seeing that, it did feel like this is really okay. He survived 6 bullets from Loomis, because we've been told a million times, and at the start of this film we got told he got shot 6 times again. But it does feel like that's when it's really rammed home. Using the thumb is like almost like he's superhumanly strong, almost to a supernatural point. It's like, mate, this guy can just put his thumb straight through your forehead, through your brain. Like, he doesn't need much, like
6 bullets would be like getting hit by 6 staplers for him.
Yeah.
He also got shot in the fucking head in part 2.
Yeah.
and survived that. Like, they kind of skirt around and say, oh, the doctor burned him. It's like, but before he did that, he shot him in the head.
Yeah.
And then
he blew out the front part of his fucking lobe.
And the other kill that I think that, jumping ahead, shows his strength, that I think it's not impossible, but I think in my head, the way it happens and just my idea of physics, like when the girl, the slut, gets the shotgun, not shot, she just gets punched straight through the guts into the wall, like it's a stake. This is a shotgun, yeah, okay, it's still, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not a sharp-ended thing, but he just rams it straight through and just pegs it to the wall with a shotgun, and you go, hang on, how that? But that just shows his strength. It's just crazy.
I'm curious, Michelle, like, because you are going through these Halloween films almost in real time on the pod with us, how are you finding the evolution of Michael? Because I almost forget, as someone who's watched these movies for most of my life, that like he doesn't start out as being that extreme thing. He's much more of a concept, or he's the boogeyman. He's a phantom. He's an idea in the first one.
He's a personification.
Yeah, he's a bit more threatening in the second one because the kills get a bit more. But in this one, it's like, no, he's a mass murdering psycho. Like, how are you finding the evolution of Michael's brutality?
Well, I think because I've seen the 2018 one and Halloween Kills, like, he's got to be supernatural, right? Like, he's not real.
Who knows?
There's nothing in this, nothing in the canon really suggests that he is anything other than a man.
And every time they lean into it, they kind of bail. I mean, there is, spoilers, but at the end of this movie, when he's dead, there is the idea that his spirit crosses over into Jamie Lloyd, and the cycle starts again because she goes and murders her foster mother, and comes out, and Loomis has almost as good a final moment as Chalice has in 3. No! That's amazing. But I think the idea they were setting up there is like, yeah, Michael's dead, and now the Michael Myers is going to be Jamie Lloyd, and
so is she under the mask now? Is Michael Myers a girl?
Well, you have to watch the next one. No spoilers for number 5, but they do kind of lean into the fact that he's supernatural. They do it again in Halloween Kills. They kind of lean into the idea that he's a supernatural being who's more than human.
Halloween Kills does it best, though. Halloween Kills. The idea has never really been as well executed or as concrete as it was in Halloween Kills. I don't think this idea that he is so malevolent and evil that it infects everybody around them. Like that's a good idea. That's a
But it-
strong idea.
And I think it's something I missed the first couple of times I watched it. Even when we did our Halloween Kills episode, Cable, I think I was still quite baffled by what was going on. But going back again, I'm like, I think I'm starting to understand more where they were leading with that idea that he's really going back to that very first film. You know, he is evil. He's not human, despite the fact that he's flesh and blood, and that very cerebral concept of like what it is to be pure evil, like quite legitimately pure evil. And the seeds get sown in number 4. Like it starts out there, like let's really see what happens when you've got pure evil.
Yeah.
Jamie Lloyd.
I was gonna say, did you just read my mind? Because I was going to say, are we going to bury the lead? And look, maybe I'm going to sound like a complete fool now, but I feel like when it comes to child actors, I understand being a child and expecting to do what Danielle Harris had to do for this movie is
in
not
her debut
easy.
film.
Well, there you go, debut film. It wouldn't be easy for any kid, and there's going to be the odd scene they might struggle or their crying doesn't look real. Man, she smashed it out of the park. For me, my subjective vision of this, every time I've watched it, I'm like, for a kid, you know, you think of like Jake Lloyd, who was in The Phantom Menace, copped a lot of heat for being a terrible actor and all that, and other child actors struggle with some really full-on roles. But for her age, in a film like this, man, I really had to struggle to find a scene where I thought she was average in, or maybe like, for me, she was genuinely scared. And I think if there was Oscars for kids back in the day, she should be almost given an Oscar or MTV. What was that? Don't they have MTV awards or something like that? Or because she, as a kid actor in this movie, has a lot to do and does it well.
I definitely buy she's traumatized as fuck. Like there's a look in her eyes the whole movie that's there. It's like, yeah, you're not gonna be okay when you grow up, kid. Even before Michael shows up, it's like you're really not gonna be okay. You're not handling the death of your parents well at all. But as a character, what do you, Shaun? You kind of like, you look a little scowly at the sound of her name. What do you think of
No. I think
changing roots from like teenage girls and adult doctor men and coming back to a literal child as the central figure in this one?
No, I thought it was a great idea. More often than not, when it comes to child actors in any genre, I usually tune out, if I'm being honest. I think the idea of using children in cinema, it can work really well. Like if you take a film like Stand By Me, or probably about 15 years ago, there was one called, a little independent film called Mean Creek, which was absolutely fantastic. It can work really, really well. But I feel like any story that focuses on a child, we're doing it again for that cinematic shorthand. This child represents purity and wholesomeness, and like it's just this kind of like, and the children they don't talk like children, they don't move like children, they're like precocious, and they're just I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. But I believe Danielle Harris playing Jamie Lloyd in this film, like she just nails it. She nails it.
I'm glad you're saying that, because I'm like, is it just me? And
no, like I think she does such a good job. She moves like a child, she talks like a child, she acts like a child, she does childish things, and it never feels like a convenience for the plot. It never feels out of character. Everything feels organic and informed by her character and where her character is at that time. That is to say, so that kind of traumatized kid looking for a home. And I think it works so well. It's one of the few cases where a child actor on screen, you're just like, nah, I buy it. I don't necessarily buy the rest of the film, but I buy her. Like I buy her.
Yeah, I like it. I think of, when I think of Jamie Lloyd as a character, I always sort of associate in my mind with Tommy Jarvis in the Friday the 13th series.
Yeah.
Where like we pivot, and for Halloween, for Friday the 13th 4 as well, we get like a little kid as the protagonist, and that's a bit more an extreme version where he's like, he's like, is this kid really like a kid? But I, in that world, I buy that. I'm like, yeah, he's a pain in the ass and a bit of a brat, but he's also a kid, so I buy that. So it's not an insane thing, but I still, like, with all the trouble they had with part 3 of the Halloween franchise, I'm still kind of surprised that when they sat down to write this script, they were like, let's make the hero a small child.
Yeah.
Because that's a pain in the ass to write around and to film.
Yeah.
Because you can't ever put them in any, well, I mean, for an 80s horror film, you can't put your lead in any sexual situations, and you can't put your lead in any genuinely, like, horrific situations. You can put them in peril, but you can't do anything fucked up, and you can't do anything sexual. And that's kind of what they did in 80s horror. They're like, all right, the lead's going to root, and then something fucking awful is going to happen. They're going to see something terrible, and then they might die, and then they live.
I was going to say, Michelle, you look like you want to say something.
Oh no, I was just like, did I miss the part where they like went into what happened to Laurie Strode? I think I messaged you guys being like, when did she die? Like, did they talk about that?
Yeah, they just quickly, it's briefly mentioned.
And like, who's the
It's
father?
briefly mentioned.
I don't think they do tell us.
They don't mention.
Oh, because it took me a while to realize, oh, she's
But they're
the
killed.
daughter of-
They're killed in a car accident, are they not?
Yeah,
No.
she dies in a car accident
Yeah.
with the husband. The first time I watched this movie, I got through the whole movie without realizing that she was meant to be Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter.
You only
I
sort of
was
realize
just
when you
like-
see the photos and stuff, you kind of go, oh,
Yeah.
that's who.
Which
did that.
again,
Yeah, because at the back it says mum at 17 or something, wasn't it?
And I think I like must have just, you know, looked away at the moment that was on screen, and that might be the only time it's like, here she is, this is her mum.
Oh, wasn't it another one of those photos that shouldn't exist that like pisses you off in every movie?
Well, it looks like it's an on-set photo of her from Halloween, and which is a bit sad. Like, I understand time constraints, budget, maybe Jamie Lee might have wanted money, so they didn't ask her, but I find it kind of sad that you've got this small, you know, this child actor or character, and they don't actually have a photo of themselves with their mum. Just maybe before they died, she's got to look back at a photo of when her mum was a teenager, several years before she was even born. It was kind of like, that's kind of weird, but yeah, that's obviously the throwback.
I don't think I've got any photographs of me, my mum.
Well, you need to change that, Shaun.
Well, I doubt it. She's in Scotland. It's another place. It's full of unicorns.
Unicorn is actually the national animal of Scotland, so he's not fucking around when he says unicorns. It really is their animal.
It's actually Scottish animal. It's fucking wild. Nobody has any idea why.
Is it wearing a kilt?
Probably
now
wearing a
that
kilt.
is just racist.
Don't knock the kilt, man. It is a marvel of clothing engineering.
Didn't you get married in a kilt, Angus?
I did, and I own a kilt, and I wear it at every formal occasion that I can get away with it because it fucking looks cool and it's comfortable.
Why are you wearing it right now?
I'm not wearing it now because I'm not wearing any pants right now. So there you go, listeners. You're welcome.
It's for his OnlyFans.
I'm doing the reverse. Yeah, there's another camera under the desk.
Sequels suck after dark.
You got to pay for that one.
Real Mars Teller, is that still the account?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, check that out. That's
doesn't matter if he has his mustache or not.
Well, it could be somewhere else.
Getting this back on track.
Yes.
Talking about Laurie Strode. So Jamie Lee Curtis had no interest in coming back at all. That's why she's not in it. So they just killed her off. Which again, another bold move.
They used her name.
No, but can I just sort of say, like Shaun touched on it a bit, but it is a ballsy move to have, or at least put a lot of faith in a child actor to carry a lot of the film. That's huge risk, because if she's no good and we don't believe it, like you said, it definitely elevates the film. But I think, you also said about, Angus, you were saying about the problem is you can't put her in too much peril, or she can't be in a sexual situation. She can't be this, she can't be that. Yes, you're right. There's only so much you can do with it. The only other thing I was thinking, it's just the risk they took with it was it's supposed to be, and again for the twist at the end, she was supposed to be roughly the age of Michael Myers and the clown suit. That's obviously the link there.
Yeah.
Plot wise, but it was a ballsy move. But I mean, thank God, like I said, Danielle Harris hit it out of the park and really nailed it. Otherwise, geez, it could be a really average film if she was no good.
And then I think
really average.
A ballsy move from the producers when they didn't have to, like, they could have made the main character a little kid, but they didn't have to make the little kid Laurie Strode's daughter.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, there was initial pictures that it was going to be potentially the kid of not Tommy and Lindsay. They would be too young for this film. But maybe one of them was meant to have a little sister who like was a baby at the time, and they were going to kind of shoehorn that in. And the older, I think it was meant to be Lindsay's like little sister, and she like didn't know about it when it happened. She's grown up with her sister being basically like traumatized, and they were going to work it in that way. Because what that would then do is it give you the opportunity to not have to mention Laurie Strode at all, other than like, oh, she moved away after all this. Because then if things go pear-shaped, you can be like, here's a bunch of money, Jamie, come back, which surprise, they did 20 years later anyway. But it saves you having to be like, I faked my death in a car crash and abandoned my daughter, who we don't mention in this movie because it's too complicated. I've got a new son. All right, anyway, here's the movie. Like, they could have saved themselves some trouble. So I am confused and I guess a little impressed that the producers were so committed. Like, nah, fuck it. This is what we're doing. She's dead. This is her daughter. This is the new Laurie, but now it's a little kid. We're going all in on this.
But it's funny you mentioned that too, because I think one of the other stories I'd heard that they at least had scripted that Lindsay would be in this film, and same with Tommy Doyle.
Yeah.
And they would play roles in the film. And I believe, is Lindsay the one that drops off Rachel and that to the discount store is supposed to be
I think it's
the Lindsay? It was supposed to be, and then they, again, budget and or script rewrites, they decided to not worry about that. And the same with Tommy Doyle, supposed to be one of the friends that is there when the other dipshit Wade tries to ask out slutty girl who I've forgotten her name for
Kelly.
Kelly. Yeah, when Brady's there, the third one's supposed to be Tommy Doyle, and the same sort of thing. They've just decided, too much. We'll just keep it to Jamie and Dr. Loomis and Rachel, and that's about it. But yeah.
Can I ask something? I don't know. I've obviously missed this while I was watching the film. How does Michael Myers work out that Jamie is Laurie Strode's daughter?
No idea.
How does Michael Myers work out that Laurie Strode is his sister?
Yeah,
like that is never explained and never makes.
It feels like that. It feels like that's critical.
Yes.
Like somebody at some stage during the production, watching the dailies or something, has surely turned around to Mustafa and said, "Hey, man,
this doesn't make sense.
Just wondering, how does he know where the fuck he's going?"
Well, you know, this script was written in like 11 days, and finished just before the writer's strike.
Yeah.
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah, so I think
churned it out real quick, and then weren't allowed to mess with it. Which again it's a marvel that this film turned out as well as it did, because it shouldn't be that good. I always thought, when I think about this movie, I always think that there is a shot of like a newspaper cutout somewhere that Michael sees, or that someone references that he's seen, but I don't think there is. I think the only newspaper cutouts are the ones that that Jamie sees. So I don't think we ever get any idea. And that is also in this movie being a movie of first, where like we first starting to see, you know, what's going to happen with Michael becoming this extra human thing and him being more violent. This is also the first one we start to see like massive plot holes are no longer going to be a big problem that people are worried about, and explaining how Michael knows or does something is not going to be a primary concern for a while. Driving like, is not gonna, everything that
one of the more interesting first that I think it does, which I think bears talking about, I'm sorry to take the reins, but it's just while it's on my mind, is the lack of Dean Cundy, but also what the lack of Dean Cundy might also bring to the film as well. It's the first Halloween film. It doesn't look like a Halloween film because Cundy's not behind the lens, but at the same time, I think that the way that the film's handled visually is actually quite exciting. It's got that kind of weird Italian cinema verite immediacy, that handheld, noisy. It turns out it's 35 mil. If you'd asked me, I'd have put money on it. It was Super 16, but apparently it's 35 millimeter film. And I was like, there's moments, particularly, and it struck me when Loomis was at the gas station at the beginning. We were following him handheld as he was walking in. I was like, this feels like, I don't want to be too lofty, it feels like the French Connection. It's what it put me in mind of. It reminded me of the French Connection. That same kind of grainy visuals, handheld. I'm curious to see what you guys think about the lack of Cundy
this time around, because like we're watching the films quite like bam, bam, bam. Like I watched 2, and then I think like I had, you know, a night where I didn't watch a Halloween film, and then I watched 3, and then like half of 4 in one night. And going that close together, the opening of Halloween 4 is kind of like, it's almost like a bit of a smack in the face. It's like, oh, I really noticed that this doesn't look and feel like the others straight out of the gate. But I never reached any point in the film where in noticing it doesn't look or feel the same, where I was like, yucky. Like I'm automatically, I'm like, okay, this is the vibe of this movie, and I'm off and running. And I think it definitely has its own its own style that it is very confident with. Like it's not trying to badly replicate the look of Dean Cundy's cinematography. It's just like, nope, this is what we're doing with this one, and we are committed. And it's like, yeah, all right, cool. Like it looks totally different, but it's fine.
Yeah.
So it's shot in a different aspect ratio. It's different guy who's behind it, but its look is solid. It's really solid.
I like it.
I like
and
it.
I think it brings something. I think it gives that reset to the franchise as well. Not in and of itself, but it certainly helps.
Also, because I guess like we're 10 years down the track, and this movie they reference a lot, like it's been 10 years. It's kind of good that it doesn't look and feel the same, because 10 years
Yeah.
later you want things to look differently. You want
Yeah,
that idea that you've moved on.
we're out of the 70s and we're almost in the 90s now. Like it's
I don't know the cinematographer for this movie. Peter Lyons Collister is their name. It's not a name that jumps out at me at all. They shot Clifford the Big Red Dog.
What, the one that was like recent?
In 2021.
Wow,
They did a
that's a big-
bunch of Arrested Development episodes.
see, that makes sense. The Arrested Development kind of feels in the same. It feels in line with the Arrested Development at times.
They actually kind of fell into being, weirdly, after this. They milled around a little into not much, and then they kind of fell into being a comedy cinematographer. They did Dunstan Checks In, they did The Beauty and the Beast, they did Juice Bigelow, Male Gigolo, The Animal, Mr. Deeds, Master of Disguise, Surviving Christmas, Garfield 2, Alvin and the Chipmunks. But mixed in there, occasionally, you get something like in 1998, they did The Replacement Killers, Jay and Fat starring that one. They did the 2005 Amityville Horror remake. They shot that, which from memory doesn't look terrible. I know
No.
I
overly
actually only watched that
digital.
game for about 3 or 4 months ago. It's actually quite good.
I think I've seen more on that
visually.
list than I have of anything you guys have mentioned, which is a little bit sad.
I think maybe lately
You're talking
he
about the
might have
Ryan Reynolds
become-
movie, yeah?
Yes, the
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds Amityville
Yeah,
Horror.
that's
looks-
quite solid for a remake.
So it looks like he's kind
remake.
of become the go-to guy for a movie set in the real world with animated characters lately, like Garfield 2, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the weird live-action SpongeBob movie, another Alvin and the Chipmunks, Clifford the Big Red Dog, like I said. So I don't know. I mean, say what you will about things like the Alvin and the Chipmunk movies, but technically trying to create a film where you have humans talking to cartoons and it's all in the same world, to film that and make it look halfway decent. Like, I have kids, so I've seen a couple of the movies on the later list. I believe that the Chipmunks are in the same room as Dave, and I think if your job is to be the guy filming that and making that work, and then when you get to the final product, it does, like, that, good on him. I think
Coming up next week, the Squeakquel.
Yes,
Alvin and the Chipmunks on Sequel Suck right here.
I think the only people who really need to hang their heads a bit on those movies are the writers. Everyone else, I think, is doing the best goddamn work that they can.
It is an interesting group of films, because you sort of think, when you think if one of his first films was Halloween 4, you kind of expect him to do a couple other horror sequels and maybe some sort of noir thrillers, or some of those, there's almost like soft porn bloody, thrillers, or, that sort of stuff that's a bit dark, a bit edgy. And then, he's doing the Chipmunks, and
he's mostly a comedy and family movie cinematographer. This is one of the few times that he went for something a bit more really this Replacement Killers and Amityville, the only time he went brutal. So I think the fact that this movie does have like a really nice, clear vibe from the picture, it's pretty sweet.
I agree.
Now that we're 4 films deep, Michelle, how's your view of Michael Myers evolving? Because we all we can jump in and out on any of these movies any day of the week and oh yeah, this one we know, but you're really you're finding your way through Haddonfield and through Myers and through these new characters that are being thrown in. What's your estimation of Michael becoming as a slasher icon and as the stories show up?
Well, I like it so far, so that's good.
It stacks up. Like, you've watched a lot of Scream movies. You've watched a couple of the Nightmare movies. I'm presuming you've seen at least one Friday the 13th movie.
You presume wrong.
Not even the remake?
Oh, I've seen the remake.
So you've seen the big guys out there in the slasher genre.
Yeah, he's one of the good ones, because he just won't fucking die. 4 movies in, well, I guess he wasn't in the 3rd one, but he's been shot in the head, he's been burnt alive, and he just keeps coming back. That's probably more terrifying.
And it's something I always put, like when I think of the big slashers, I always put Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees closest together because they're kind of like, well, Jason was a direct imitator, but they are kind of the same thing where it's like an alleged human man wearing a mask is coming after you to kill you. Jason keeps dying. Jason keeps dying in the movies and is basically a reanimated zombie in the latter from like 6 onwards. He's a zombie basically, but he keeps fucking dying in these movies. Michael never kind of dies. You're right. Like he gets badly hurt and then seems to just
Come
get
back.
over it.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually die, does he? Am I missing something? Like you've seen H2O,
No.
haven't you, Michelle? Or have you
Yeah.
not seen? Okay, so H2O, like he gets his fucking head cut off, and the way that they deal with that is the next one is like, no, that wasn't actually him. Like, there's no point where he actually dies and then he reattaches his head or something. That's a pretty scary concept.
Yeah.
Is it holding up? Is it holding up for you, Michelle?
Yeah.
Like watching these movies now, are you like, that's a bit much?
I think so. And this one had my first like jump scare when he grabbed
really?
a leg under the bed.
Oh, in
That
the
got
dream
me.
sequence.
Yeah, that got me.
And that's like such a terrifying thing for when you are a child, but also to see happen to a child. That nightmare scenario of like, there's someone on the bed, and there fucking is, even though there's not. But
there could have been though, because he's kind of creepy.
I was going to say she's so good in that scene again. Just her visual, her looking at the closet, and then it creeps open again, and she looks back, and there's that look of dread, confusion, and then then she gets obviously the grab for under the bed, which is the big misdirect. But even those scenes, just visually, she's so good in those scenes. It's like so believable. But anyway, we'll get off that one.
Is he silly at all in this movie? Like
I think the
mask makes it a bit.
Yeah, the mask.
Because I guess what I'm trying to figure out as we go through these movies, and I'm especially curious with Michelle, but also like with Shaun, who's watched these movies so many times and seems to be evaluating his estimation of a couple, especially with Halloween 2 and Halloween 3. Like, at what I think I have rose-colored glasses a bit with these movies. I grew up watching them. I love them, and Michael Myers is just a permanent figure, you know, in something that I love in film and pop culture. But I wonder at what point like he crosses from being scary character in a movie to being horror icon, who even though what they're doing is fucking ridiculous, we still love it because they are now the horror icon and we don't really care what happens as long as there's a boil suit and a mask and a knife. So is any part of this, apart from the fact this mask looks fucking stupid, is any part of it silly, Michelle?
I don't think so, because you look at him, he's still scary, like whereas, you know, we talk about the Scream movies and like you watch sort of like 3 and 4 and they get a bit like comedic. Like I think Lee Waddell was even saying to us, like they're not scary anymore.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I
think what he said was the fucking train went off the tracks. He was pretty.
Well, I was trying to be nice about it.
It was fun. It's funny Michelle brought that up because I was actually thinking about that and what Lee had said, and you know, not to deviate too much off Halloween and talk about Scream, but I take it as, you know, your first couple of killers, Stu and Billy, are kind of fit, kind of know what they're doing. But trust me, if you've run around in that Scream costume, it's not easy. But
spoken like a man who's chased teenagers.
I think Mickey is probably the same. You kind of go, yeah, okay. But then by the time you get further down
to 4, you can
especially 4, Jill, and you go, well, they're not perfect killers. They're trying to replicate something they've seen on film. But yeah, I just wonder if Michael gets that far. I'm just trying to think, does it get too ridiculous? I don't know. I think the fact that he hangs on to the top of the car for so long and also has a knife in his hand, that feels a little bit over the top. I'm like, 2 hands, yes, and maybe you don't have the knife, but then the fact that he rolls off and he's still got the knife firmly in his hand, I kind of like, don't know if that's, but then that's...
But he's got super strength.
He's got such grip strength. We saw
it start. I know. It's... Yeah, you don't want Michael Myers to get too comedic, I don't think. And
do you feel like it's becoming laborious yet, Michelle?
Not yet.
No, you don't.
No, not yet.
Because like that's always the fear that I always have, is that whenever you step in a new sequel, and I'm kind of, you know, at the time of this recording, we've got a couple of days before the Hellraiser reboot comes out, which I'm really, really excited about. But I'm also fucking dreading it because I'm like, please don't be another rehash of the nonsense we've seen. What the fuck is that?
It's my dog.
Is that what you call it?
Michelle's dog just kind of leaned into frame and
Yeah.
just stretched right and direct. There was no like walking on the bed. It just leaned on the frame and stuck
It was
its
like a
tongue in her ear.
visual
It
effect.
was- Especially talking about Hellraiser. It was like, oh,
No,
Christ.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
like,
agree with you,
I-
Shaun. I know what you're saying. Like, I'm a very passionate Predator fan, and I just think that's one of those things. And Alien probably falls in that same bracket. That once it's been done once and maybe twice, you're starting to really stretch when you either show the character too much, or the fact is we know the character so well and what it can do that it's very hard. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's out, and unfortunately, there's no surprise factor anymore. And I think that's the problem, like you're saying, like whether it's Hellraiser or even Michael Myers, it's very hard to, I guess, reinvent the wheel too much that people are going to be so pissed off, but then also keep it fresh. And so I hear what you're saying. It's like
because even Friday the 13th in that regard, like the backdrop to Friday the 13th changes. You know, like Friday the 13th Part 7, for instance, is the telepathic girl. Then Part 8, he goes to Manhattan. Then Part 9, he's in small town America, and then Part 10, he's in space. And then, you know, whereas like Michael Myers, it's just suburbia, new teens, suburbia, new teens, Donald Pleasance. I shot him 6 times. Suburbia. Like, it's just, and I wonder, like, outside of the nostalgia that we all have for the franchise, because we've seen it, you know, ad nauseum. I'm just curious when, as somebody who doesn't have that fan base in them, when is it going to start to become tedious for the viewer?
Well, it's not there yet.
I'm curious to see when it's going to get. I got a fucking sneaky suspicion it's going to be Part 5, but
yeah.
Is that another like tick in the good on you column for Halloween 3, in that like we're 4 films in and we haven't had a chance to really settle in to a rhythm? Like we talked about Halloween 2, it takes place on the same night as Halloween 1, but it's a very different feel of a movie. You know, it's most of it happens in a hospital for one, but it feels like a totally different style of movie. It is much more a slasher than a slow burn thriller. Then Halloween 3, you know, we're off with warlocks and Stonehenge and robots, and then Halloween 4, we are sort of returning, but it feels like a return to something we haven't seen in a while, especially, you know, for all the people who watched the series as they came out in order and were like, fuck 3, where's Michael? And it's like, oh, he's back, good. We want this. We want him walking around suburban streets chasing teenagers and murdering them. So it is kind of not able to be, like you said, laborious yet, because it is not repeating anything at this point.
Yeah.
Like it's sad that Jamie Lee Curtis isn't in this, but we're not watching Michael versus Laurie again. Like, this is the first time that's happened. We've got Loomis back, but he's a different beast this time. He's a
different guy. Yeah.
Deformed. He's insane. He's becoming more of a creature than a man in a great way. I think it's fantastic for the film, and I think Donald Pleasance is having a fucking field day in this movie.
He's loving it.
But yeah, we're getting something. You know, Sheriff Brackett is gone. A lot of like the familiar touchstones we had in the first 2 are gone. And so even though Michael is back and chasing teens, you know, even little things like having, it's not a teenage babysitter, it's the girl who gets babysat is the lead. And we've got Rachel as kind of the stand-in Laurie, I guess. But we haven't really talked about it at all, but I quite like in this movie. I think she's
right. She's good.
Ellie Cornell. I don't know what the hell she's done apart from Halloween 4 and Halloween 5. Not much. She didn't.
No, she didn't. I don't think she did a lot.
Didn't pursue acting much. Yeah.
No. She really kind of hung around the fringes of TV movies and single episode stuff for a bit, and she made.
I thought you were going to kill her off for a second then.
No. She made a film in 2020 called Dead Reckoning.
I just know you like to sometimes kill actors without their knowledge.
Rest in peace, Bill Pullman.
Bill Pullman.
Jeff Daniels. A lot of
history's going to prove me right on that one. Okay, one day someone's going to listen to that episode and be like, "He's dead." So, all right, I'll be very sad when it happens. There's too many bills. It's like, tell me which Chris is in a superhero movie. Can't do it because it's all of them. Right? It's just hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Chris Pine's not in a superhero movie, is he?
Isn't he?
Chris Pine?
Yeah,
Chris Pine.
He's in Wonder Woman.
Oh yeah, he's
Yes.
Ah.
Oh, wow.
See, all the Chris's are in superhero movies. There's too
True.
many. They get
But
mixed
which
up.
one is the best Chris?
No, now we're getting off. We
No,
gotta
we're
keep.
not.
It's a
are
group
way-
chat question.
Hemsworth.
It's a group chat question.
It's not a question. There's no question.
Knowing, well, three of us know what this movie is setting up to come in the near future, but it hasn't happened yet, and that's something we talked about with Halloween. Like Halloween 3 didn't know it was going to be the bastard child when it came out. It was the start of something new and exciting. Halloween Return of Michael Myers doesn't know what the producers are going to do with this franchise from here on out. So looking at it as like imagining this is it. This is the, being in Michelle's shoes. This is the only Halloween film to date that's happened, and the sequels haven't existed yet. It stacks up pretty goddamn well, I think. Like it is a victim of its sequels that I think it gets dragged down a bit. But if you just watch this one and ignore that anything else exists on the other side, fucking great fun horror movie slasher, pretty true to the Myers character, pretty true to the world that John Carpenter built. I think I don't. We haven't really spoken about. I don't know if there's much to say about him. What do we think about the new Michael Myers? What do we think about George P. Wilbur as Michael Myers? He's kind of.
I mean,
like
it's hard to know because I think it's the mask is very. It throws you off. I mean, I feel like the movements and a lot of the stuff's there, and
exactly.
it kills. It doesn't. It
It's
feels
not like the
same.
Friday the 13th where like sometimes Jason looks like a pro wrestler and sometimes he looks like a farm boy. Like he looks. He's slightly shorter, I think, than one of the other ones. I don't know if they came before or after, but he's still like 6'4". He's a big.
I know privately.
He's 6'4". Pussy.
Yeah. Spoken like someone who's over 6 foot. For those of us who are under 6 foot, fuck you.
Have you ever been in the same room as me, Angus? We have, haven't we?
Yeah. I think
He's
we
a
have
big
one
bugger.
Chapflix episode.
Yeah, 205.
Yeah, that's. Look, I've spoken to Michelle about this in group chats. I forget because so many of these podcasts happen over Zoom though. Like when I stand next to Cable, I was like, fuck, you're huge.
Yeah, Cable, a big boy.
I forget I'm so much shorter than you guys, so I quite like when we're all sitting down.
Oh, don't worry. When me and Shaun ran into each other at work, and I still felt like I can't believe I have to look up just to talk to him.
Well, I don't even know if Shaun's got legs yet, so.
He does, and they're about 6 foot just on their own.
Like 100, yeah, they're fucking wild. Like a standard door frame. Like I need to just duck to get under a door frame. A standard door frame.
Yeah,
you could totally be Jason or Michael.
You could be a Jason.
That's where I was going with that. It's like I'd be a sick Michael Myers, I reckon.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Cable just put up a bunch of photos of him in his full gear, and there's a couple of shots where I'm like, is he comparing that one to a still from the movie, or is that him? And then I was like, oh no, that's freaking like it's a little unsettling.
That's very good.
He's got the
very
gear.
unsettling.
He looks like Michael Myers in the gear.
He should be wearing it now.
If
imagine
imagine
the damage I could do.
I mean, as a slasher, as a horror film, as at its time, the most recent version of Michael Myers and Halloween and everything, this film really deserves a lot of praise. I think as a Halloween film, we know what comes, but Halloween 4 didn't, and I think with all the retconning, especially, like I was a big fan of 2018 retconning the hell out of all the sequels because it does get quite convoluted, but it's a bit sad that this one kind of it's the baby with the bathwater a bit. Like if you're going to get rid of 6 and 5, you kind of have to get rid of 4 just to have a nice, and if you're going to do that, you might as well get rid of 2 and just go back there. But it's a bit sad that they threw this one out.
Yeah,
it really does have a lot of great points and a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, and but what's just interesting, which Shaun touched on it a bit earlier, was there's some ideas from this movie they've just rehashed for Halloween Kills. I mean, like the mob sort of mentality of things. The ambulance got changed for, especially for Halloween 2018, was changed for the prison bus. But there's a lot of similarities and a lot of things they've handpicked from this as well. That
even
I feel
the start, like going to, it's like welcome to hell, and the 2 people.
Yeah, going to the sanatorium.
Yeah, it kind of felt a lot the start of that, and he hasn't, in 4 he hasn't moved in 10 years, and in 2018 he hasn't spoken in 40 years. But like it's still kind of the same thing where like he's lying in wait like a beast. It's interesting you're talking about Halloween Kills. I was reading the other day, this film of all the Halloween films had the highest kill count until Halloween Kills. I think there's like 17 in this movie, so it is the most like violent, brutal and body count level all the way through until they really let him off the leash in Halloween Kills. And I read that and I was like, that's got to be a mistake. And then I thought about 5 and 6 and especially like H2O and H2K. I was like, oh yeah, like they really reined him in a lot, you know. I mean, again, spoilers for Michelle, but for 5, there's a bit of time where he's not really up for going around killing a bunch of teens and needs a bit of rest. So, you know, there's a lot of
Have some
stuff
chicken soup.
Chicken soup, Michael. You're right there, Jim. I'm actually, I'm quietly pretty pumped to talk about 5 because goddamn. But
I was going to say, how good is Brady? How good is Brady? Because I was kind of thinking it felt like him and Rachel were actually in a proper relationship. She just hadn't solidified it, and then which was code for they obviously hadn't done it yet. And then it was, which is weird that they don't actually explicitly say, because I felt like at that time they were sort of mentioning that stuff. It was more like, oh, 88, we're cutting back. We can't have cigarette smoking in films, and we can't talk about virginity and or sex. So we're going to code it with just going steady a bit more, or making some sort of commitment that we're going to refer to each other as boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever. But it was like, oh, my plans changed. Oh, well, the slut that is keen on me, she's given me an offer, so I'll just go there. Like, what the hell?
Douchebag.
I guess one of the final questions I have on this movie, it's something I can't figure out for myself. Maybe you guys can make a decision. Is this movie well directed, or is it just kind of everything else is good enough that the director just really had to like call action? I can't figure out if this is a well directed film.
I think there's still, if you really, really analyze it enough, there's still a lot of problems with it. But I think, for me, what elevates obviously the character of Jamie Lloyd or Danielle Harris. I think Rachel's pretty good in it. Obviously, having Dr. Loomis back is a lot of fun, and there's some good performances, some good kills, and stuff that holds it together. But overall, I think there's a lot of issues with it. But I can't really, whether it's the direction or, again, maybe it came down to simply like we were talking about before, the script and the writer strike. They had to just get it done, just churned out pretty quickly, because there's a lot of stuff that's still in it that doesn't make a lot of sense, really.
The director of this, Dwight H. Little, he kind of
directed one of my favorite early 90s, two of my favorite early 90s action films, Brandon Lee Rapid Fire.
I remember watching that.
My most favorite underrated Steven Seagal film, Marked for Death.
That's nice that he got in there for a moment and got to do that. Right before Marked for Death, he really took a swing at like staying in the horror. I mean, after Halloween 4, he did an episode of Freddy's Nightmares, and then after that, he directed the Phantom of the Opera that Robert Englund starred in, which I also missed before, but was shot by the same cinematographer as Halloween 4. After that, though, I mean, we might talk about on future episodes because he did direct Free Willy 2, The Adventure Home. So could be a future episode of Sequel Suck. Then it's all TV for a very long time. In fact, it's almost exclusively TV until he weirdly directs the Tekken movie in 2010.
Yeah.
Weird thing to hand to someone who hasn't directed a movie.
Absolutely diabolical. I don't know if anybody else has seen that.
I did not. I've seen plenty of clips on it. He also
fucking train wreck.
Was involved. Did he direct, or was he just involved with Anacondas? I thought
he directed Anacondas.
The Hunt for the Blood Orchid.
The Blood Orchid. Yeah.
Which
Hasselhoff in that one?
I genuinely put to you,
that was part 3.
Fun movie. It is
it is a better film than Anaconda.
Are you saying it is, or you're asking if it is?
No, I'm saying it is.
Hello.
Anacondas, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid, is better than Anaconda.
Well, I just
fucking
fighting Anaconda about.
Wow, I'm gonna have to watch that now because I don't mind Anaconda. I think
I don't mind Anaconda as well.
I watched
Daft, so stupid, but I think Blood Orchid is a better film.
But it's crazy to think how many good people are in Anaconda.
And it's crazy to think how many people I've never heard of are in Anacondas. Cuddy Strickland, Eugene Bird, Johnny Messner, Nicholas Gonzalez.
Johnny Messner is one of my great man crushes. You shut your mouth.
Johnny Messner? What's Johnny Messner ever done?
Have you seen Running Scared?
Running Scared?
Sorry, the Billy Crystal one.
Yeah,
Running Scared with Paul Walker.
No.
What?
You
actually make me sick.
Running
Paul
Scared
Walker.
with Paul Walker.
Running Scared, Paul Walker, Vera Farmiga, Chaz Palminteri, Johnny Messner. It's unreal.
Johnny
It's
Messner
so
plays a character
good.
called Tommy Toombs Perello, and I do kind of want to see it because
It's so good.
All right, it's gone on the watch list.
Good.
So everyone involved in this film kind of doesn't really do much after this film. There is no, Paul Rudd having a debut career moment, and there is no Jamie Lee Curtis going on to do big things. There is no Tom Atkins becoming a genre legend as the years go by. Is this film going to get forgotten in the wake of the David Gordon Green trilogy that's out? Is this going to be one of those ones that people just don't reach for when they're looking to watch horror movies anymore because it's you don't need to watch it, it's been retconned out of existence, it doesn't have the niche kind of wacky factor of number 3, it doesn't directly link to John Carpenter's original like number 2, it's kind of sitting in this weird middle ground? Do you think this film's going to get erased, or do you think it's going to have people come back to it once we're done with Halloween Ends and go, actually, fucking what, we should get into that again?
It's an interesting question because it's all very subjective, and we'll all have our own sort of opinions. But I think you, me, and Shaun are roughly the same sort of age and grew up with these movies, that we have nostalgia for it and we would never let it be erased. But I can understand maybe someone in Michelle's seat goes, oh, yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. But once I've seen these other ones, why would I go back and watch this and have it erased? But I think there's still enough love in the current generation. People are going back because they want to watch it. Like the people like that, like Shaun and me, that have the box sets. Like you might not watch particular movies in the franchise that often compared to some others, but I still feel like it's still justified in being there. And I think, streaming, Michelle, how did you watch it? Did you watch it on Stan?
Mm-hmm.
So it's on stream. It's available on streaming. I know, yes, you're not going to go down to your local video store anymore and get a copy on VHS, but you can still watch it on. You can still watch it on streaming. I said streaming on streaming. That's an idea for a streaming service. It's all just horror movies. It's called streaming.
It exists and it's called Shudder.
Well, I was going to say Shudder is that.
Yeah. So
which also has Halloween 4 and 5.
I think it's not going to be. I think if the technology for watching films the way we do now didn't exist, I can kind of see 4 being kind of sort of phased out of existence, not being reprinted, not being something you could hire. But you've got streaming services now. You've got the 4K edition that came out by Scream and Shout, or Shout Factory, Scream Factory, whoever brought it out. So, and you've got documentaries for it. You've got Danielle Harris that does a podcast and does a lot of the conventions over in the States, the horror stuff with
in costume
and stuff.
She sold her clown costume to a fan.
Yeah. Crazy, isn't it?
Oh, wow.
So I still think there's a lot of people involved, or people. There's just the hardcore fans that will still keep it alive. Whether newer people to the franchise come and watch that particular film or get the wrong advice not to at least give it a go, I don't know. But I think you should be watching this film. You don't have to love it. You don't have to watch it ever again. But I think you still need to put it on and give it a spin.
I think the biggest thing that kind of has working against it in staying in the conversation and the culture with horror movies is that it's pretty good. Like, it's not oh, that one's so bad, you got to check it out. And it's not like, oh, did you know such and such is in that one? It's like, this is a pretty solid horror film that has Michael Myers before, he goes off the rails for a little while, which doesn't make people run to it.
And I don't even know how to term this, but when you say, oh, it's so bad, but it's good, I think it's not so bad, but there's still again, like I say, if you peel the onion layers back, I personally find little, whether it's the mask, the design of the mask, or a couple of the little plot holes or whatever, seem so stupid, but this still works, this movie, as pure entertainment. It's still a fun movie.
The ending is a weird fucking way to go about.
But it's so good though.
It's great, but when you watch it happen, step by step as it's playing out, you're like, what the fuck are they doing? Why is this the way they chose to finish out this movie? That's just silly. But as it goes along, you go with it. But
if you roll it right back to the character of Jamie, she wouldn't really know her uncle was involved, and I don't think they would tell her uncle was involved in these murders.
Are you
And then
sad
he
your
wa- and
mum's
then he-
dead, mate?
and then
Let
when
me
he's-
take your mind off it.
Yeah.
Your uncle's one of the worst serial killers
Yeah.
in the history of America.
And so I don't think she would be privy to that information unless some assholes at school told her, which actually wouldn't surprise me either. But she wouldn't probably be privy to information that when he was 6 or about her age, he wore a clown suit and stabbed to death his first sister. So the fact that she picks up a clown suit out of all this costumes she could pick up, but then she has that sort of revelation / flashback to him kind of dream weird sequence, but then she still takes that clown suit and still puts it on later. I was kind of, that was like, that seems pretty dumb to me. But then I'm like, but are we seeing that as an audience? And I don't know, it's a little bit convoluted a little bit, but it's kind of like, that's kind of dumb. But the end works for me though. But
It's great.
yeah,
What do you think, Michelle? Now that you're getting into it, are you going to reach for Halloween 4 again when you
I
feel like
think
watching a
so.
Halloween movie?
I think so. I would watch it again. Doesn't surprise me that it's the 4th movie and it's convoluted. Reminds me of a little Scream 4.
Michelle,
Fuck, mate, you think this
Michelle,
one's
Wow.
fucking
you have
convoluted?
no
Jesus.
fucking idea what convoluted is,
Yeah,
mate.
no.
You have no
How quickly can
idea.
you watch the Halloween films tomorrow? I gotta see how this fucking pans out.
Oh
Oh.
my!
I was going to say the other only funny thing about, and again, this could be rewrites or just making the movie on the fly and not really thinking too much about it. But Sheriff Mika has a daughter that gets killed and is in that final scene, and either he doesn't know his daughter's dead yet, but he doesn't seem to be emotionally in a bad place because of it. He's more like, oh, as long as Rachel and Jamie are okay, the girls are okay. It's kind of like, it's like I feel like he knows, but he does. I don't know. It's like maybe he hasn't been told yet, or I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's a scene missing, or maybe he just doesn't know yet the
Maybe
full
he just
brutality
doesn't
of
like
what's
her
in-
very much.
Mm.
Maybe he's like,
Well,
I'm
maybe
gonna
she's a
save
bitch.
so much money.
Oh, and that again, talking about little plot things, like he obviously has a big house. He has a big house, but I feel like things happen in that house. Someone screams, but then someone else in the house doesn't hear someone scream or whatever. I just feel like that's a little bit over the top. Like some of that stuff's a little bit silly.
Yeah.
And why did they kill the dog and then no one ever found the dog? That was just upsetting for no reason.
Poor old Sunday.
It is upsetting, but it does something that not a lot of the other like slasher people do. Is like sometimes Michael just kills someone just for him.
Mm.
Like
Yeah, just
Jason
for
is
the
all
fuck of
about
it.
killing them and then revealing the bodies at a certain point to really freak someone out. Sometimes Michael's just like, I'm just gonna fucking kill that thing, and
True.
no one is ever gonna know except me. That's
Well,
just for me.
I guess the only point is that's the other way for Loomis to say, I know he's been here because that dog's dead in the closet. Like,
That's such a fucking just like, I'm gonna kill it because it's alive. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill it because it's alive.
Yeah, just it's in my vicinity, so I'm stabbed dead. Yeah, it's a good version of Michael. What ratings? What do we think of Halloween 4? Kicks off, Michelle. What do you give Halloween 4? The return of Michael Myers.
I'd probably give it a
I
4.
want to know what you give and why.
I just know what I like. I think I would give it a 4 because I liked it more than Season of the Witch, and I liked it more than Halloween 2. Is that a good enough why?
That's
Sure.
It's a pretty decent why. What do
I
you
would
think?
watch it again.
I mean, that's pretty high praise coming from you. There's so many movies you're like, yeah, I've seen it. I don't ever need to watch it again in my life. It's like, no, I would watch it again. Oh shit! All right, it's Top Gun Maverick all over again. What do you think, Shaun? What would you give this bad boy?
I'd probably give it a 3 again. I think it's.
You think it's on par with Season of the Witch?
Yeah, I think it's a fair, no pun intended. I think it's a fair stab. I think it's. I think there's a lot to like about it. It goes back over the Michael Myers territory without being slavish to it necessarily. It introduces a couple of new elements. Like I say, the cinematography for me was one of the big ones. I'm just like, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in this world, but not seeing it through the same lens. I think Danielle Harris was absolutely awesome in it.
Amazing.
But I think that her character and her work notwithstanding, the rest of the characters are pretty atom thin. There's not much learning going on with any of them. But again, there's also those seeds of great ideas, like the mob and all that kind of stuff, which was later brought to fruition in the latest trilogy.
Evil dies tonight.
That's it. Not a train wreck by any stretch. But yeah, again, just not a patch on the first one.
I'm sort of a bit annoyed that I said Season of the Witch was a 4 in hindsight, because I probably enjoy this more, and because it's Michael and it's a lot of fun, but I probably would mark it down because of the things that I just can't get past, like the silly sort of mistakes or plot holes, or just things that just don't really ring true. Like Jamie, like a trick or treating, and then all of a sudden it's like 8:30 and there's nobody in the street at all, and she's wandering around the street looking for people. It's like, oh, that's a bit weird. Like, you can't just shut Halloween down at 9 o'clock. It doesn't ring true. But anyway,
You can if your budget only allows your
but I
actors to be on set for 8
yeah.
hours.
well, no. Well,
I
the
find
funny
you
thing,
can if you wave the gun around enough.
I was going to say, I believe, I think the story goes, I think Danielle Harris said it in one of the Halloween documentaries, that that scene where she's wandering around the streets by herself and she's screaming out for Rachel or looking for someone or help, that was at like 4 a.m. in the morning, and people heard her screaming and actually called the police.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they thought this kid was getting kidnapped. So
yeah. So no, I'll give it a 3.5. It's definitely really enjoyable though. It's not perfect. It's got its faults, but it's enjoyable to watch. And going back to the start, he was downstairs. They brought him up a lift and whatever, and then when he died, he went back down towards hell again, which is really cool, like little touch.
Yeah, it's got a beautiful
I
symmetry.
agree.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I give this 3.5. I think I enjoy so much about it, and I think I'm glad it's there, because like there's sometimes I really just want to watch a Halloween film, and I've watched others so many times, and you just, in the absence of something new, watch the thing you haven't seen as much, so it feels a bit new. And this one still does for me. I'm probably going to ruin that by watching it a bunch more in the coming, year or so, because I'm like, this is pretty good. And then
In the coming days.
Yeah, tonight.
I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I'm probably gonna go on. I'm probably gonna go and rewatch parts of it tonight. Now that we've talked about it, it's like I want to check in some stuff. It's what I did with Halloween 2. It's what I will probably do with Halloween 3 as well. Yeah, like it does suffer from, and I think all Halloween films, apart from 3, suffer from the fact that you are forever trying to do what John Carpenter did perfectly the first time. No one's ever going to be able to replicate what John Carpenter did the very first time he created and showed us this character. So from then on, you are almost fighting a losing battle. This one comes pretty close to winning for me. It really is a lot of fun, and you can just put it on, watch it, enjoy it, and not have to get pissed off about any kind of convoluted lineage or in-world clashes or conundrums. Like, it's just like, here it is. Things ain't that bad yet, so enjoy.
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed watching this one more than the original. Am I about to get?
Yeah, right.
All right.
No,
Well,
how come?
No, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna criticize.
How come?
It was just more enjoyable to watch. More things seemed to happen. I don't know, just liked it more.
I mean, you're definitely right. More things happen. More people get killed for one.
Yeah, like
hardly anyone gets killed in number 1. And
yeah, he looks
17
horrible, but
Right.
it was just, I don't know, more fun to watch than the first one.
No, I can sort of see where Michelle's coming from. I think the first one is iconic, and if you grew up with that one first, like I did, it's hard to think of anything else being better. But it is also a slow burn and a slow build to the carnage. Whereas if you're into these slasher films and you don't want that slow burn, you want to get straight into the action, this is a good movie. I mean, can't argue with that.
Yeah, and not to like repeat myself too much, but like I said in the Halloween 2 episode, first Halloween is not a slasher. It's a slasher by revisionist
By proxy.
history. Yeah, by proxy,
Yeah.
because everything after is a slasher, and it invented the genre in so many ways that it gets lumped in. This one is a slasher, and that's what we have been raised on and raised to love, and then made aware of, especially through modern pop culture horror films. It's like, this is what a horror movie is, and this is what a slash movie is, and for really like tick 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 and all the boxes of what a slasher is. So I get that someone, especially who doesn't have that deep-seated nostalgia and passion for Halloween films, would be like, yeah, fucking give me 4 over 1. One takes a lot of time. You got to watch it. I think it's similar to a lot of films where, like Alien. Like, Alien is an undisputable classic, but it takes a lot more attention and a lot more effort to watch that movie than Aliens, or even Alien Resurrection. And it doesn't mean that it's better or worse. It's just like, sometimes it's just easier to watch the ones that come after, because all the hard work has been done.
Yeah, all the setup.
Like, no storytelling, no build up, no character development, just kill that fucking guy. All right, here we go. I am thrilled and delighted we've gotten a couple of films deep into Halloween. I am very excited for what comes next. Like,
I'm
feel
nervous.
I feel like it's this is us getting strapped into the fucking right here. This is we haven't even set off yet. This is why I signed up for this. Is five onwards. I'm like, let's see what happens. I'm excited.
Yeah, this is the first little dip of the roller coaster. You're like, oh, that was a bit of fun, and then suddenly you realize, like, oh no, there's a big drop coming up.
Yeah.
But until then, until we get to that drop,
Evil dies tonight.
Do a cable. Evil dies. But until we get to the precipice of number 5, thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, follow everything on the social medias. You'll find it all below this YouTube video clip or somewhere in the description of the episode in Spotify, Apple, whatever you're listening this to. And remember, evil tries to die tonight, and then tomorrow, and then in 20 years, and then in 40 years, and then in another 2 years after that, because it never really dies. But still, not all sequels suck.
By definition alone, they're inferior films. Films. Sequels suck.